his knowledge on football is second to none. He is at the NFL Network. He is at CBS. And I have been excited to talk to him about the Bears and the NFL draft. And he joins us right now on the CarX Tire and Auto Hotline. CD, how you feeling?
I'm feeling pretty good after that intro. I feel even better. I just hope you never find out what I did earlier today. So,
what'd you do earlier today?
I feel a lot better.
What'd you do?
I can neither confirm nor deny that I, might have kicked an old man down some stairs today. But that's a whole different deal.
My guess, Charles, if you did that, that man deserved exactly what he got. That's my guess.
Could you imagine? Could you absolutely imagine? Oh, Lord.
It was probably Rich Eisen, and he probably deserved it, right?
Well, back in the day, Rich would have had us both escorted out of the building. Well, you know how it is, Tom.
Oh yeah.
You got to know who's got the juice.
Yeah,
Rich had the juice, and I certainly did not. You had more of a case, but I definitely would have been the first to go.
I was. You're still there. I'm not. So I didn't win that.
I think that was a conscious decision on your part.
Charles, we were just talking about Caleb Williams. It's been all the rage here, like not even since the season ended. This has been all the talk here since middle of the year with Justin, and it's been a very polarizing conversation. But I think finally Chicago has settled in to now knowing and embracing that Caleb Williams is coming to Chicago. And I was intrigued to hear a couple of weeks ago, I think, to read and to see who your comp is with a current NFL quarterback to Caleb Williams. Tell our audience who you think his comp is.
Yeah, for me, it's Aaron Rodgers because of what I saw, especially this season. And you have to understand that when I'm doing that comp, you guys get it. So anyone who can hear my voice, whenever we do comps, we're not always saying that guy is that guy. That's who he might remind us of, has traits of. We get there. I'll give you a quick example. J.J. McCarthy out of Michigan. When you watch him play, do you think immediately of C.J. Stroud? Probably not. But he's my comp because last year when C.J. Stroud came out, all we talked about were the things we didn't see him do. You didn't see him run the ball very often. You didn't see him have to play under pressure very often. You didn't see any comebacks because they were up 30 in most games except when they played Michigan. All those things that went into it. Then he goes out and he's the rookie of the year by far, one of the great rookie seasons a quarterback has ever had. And all those things we said we weren't sure he could do, he was doing them. Now, they were on tape, but you had to really search for a lot of them. Aren't we saying the exact same thing about J.J. McCarthy this year? I mean, the exact same thing. We didn't see this. We don't see that. This isn't happening. Oh, that's right. They ran 28 times against Penn State, didn't throw it in the second half. All of that kicks into the deal. So that's why my comp isn't going to be an apples to apples with him. The reason I go with Aaron Rodgers with Caleb Williams this year, plug in the USC tape, and I know you guys already have. How many times did you see him play out of structure? And how many of it was always that the play broke down and he had to be out of structure? Or did he quit trusting people up front and get out of structure earlier than he normally would? Remember before Aaron Rodgers had that last big run of it, didn't he go like back-to-back MVPs? Mm-hmm. You guys remember those 2 or 3 seasons beforehand when we had all the conversation about friction with Mike McCarthy and, this wasn't going as well as it was before, and blah, blah, blah. You go back and plug in those tapes, because I remember doing a game against Detroit. I remember specifically. And I told my crew before the game I wanted to make the point, and sure enough, Aaron gave it to me early. Took the snap and started creating before we even got into a rhythm. There was either a lack of trust there or he thought that was the right way to play. Whatever it was. Well, USC last year, offensive line, some struggles, and he always had to make plays because the defense wasn't very good, so he was always having to bring his team back. That was a big reason I saw the same thing. Those types of plays, unstructured, can run the football when necessary. Accuracy is off the charts. Throws the deep ball really, really well. All those things that go into it. That's where I put the comp. Now, got a long way to go before you're Aaron Rodgers. We know that.
Of course.
But if you're going to comp someone, style of play is one thing. Because a lot of people comp to Mahomes. And I get it. I'm not saying that comp is wrong. I just see it with different eyes because of what I remember about Aaron during those years where unstructured was actually the structure. And I saw that a lot with Caleb Williams last year at USC. And by the way, that can change as soon as he gets an offensive line he trusts, right? That can change as soon as you get back to it. And remember when it changed with Aaron Rodgers? And back in rhythm, 1, 2, 3, throw the ball. Tom, you know as a receiver, if it's supposed to be 3 and a hitch, that ball's got to come out because of where your route is and how you're breaking it and all that. He got back to that, and my goodness, he got back to being that Aaron Rodgers, and we saw the back-to-back MVP.
Yeah. We were just talking about this, Charles, and we're talking to Charles Davis from the NFL Network and CBS, that 2 different NFL experts have comped Caleb Williams to Kyler Murray. When you hear that, how do you react?
I think there's some similar to what I'm talking about with Aaron, but much more of a – see, when I think of Kyler getting unstructured, I do think much more of Kyler unstructured than Kyler taking off downfield. You know, Aaron was getting out of structure, but he still wanted to throw that ball downfield. As you guys well know, when he gets out of structure, Aaron, he's not throwing the 5-yard check down. He's throwing the kill downfield, right? He wants to throw that ball and put something, make you pay for it. That's why I see more of him than I do of Kyler. Plus, it's hard for me to get the body comp, which is a little bit different. I do see where they're saying with style of play a little bit. I kind of can get that. I can get with that. But to see Kyler Murray skitter around the field, it's a little bit different for me. It's hard for me to get my head totally there and make that comp myself. And again, I'm not saying that they're wrong. That's how they see it. I see it differently.
Charles, obviously, you know, Caleb has shown on a number of occasions, illustrated what you just talked about, being able to play out of structure. Can he play in structure at a really high level at the NFL?
He can. Go back to 2022 and plug in those tapes.
Right.
It's a different deal.
Yeah.
I mean, you're just like, oh. Go back to Oklahoma when he took over there and watch him play in structure. Yeah, he can do it. I'm not worried about that part. I really feel like last year there was a big part of him out of structure because of what I said before. Maybe a little less trust of the offensive line, but he was in tight ball games all year long. Like, a lot of his games was, if he didn't score, like, what do we talk about in certain things? If you don't score here, it could be a such and such point swing. Well, for him, he was thinking it could be a 14-point swing. The 7 he's not getting on this drive, and the 7 they're going to give up on the other side.
Right.
I mean, remember, did you guys watch Colorado last year, them against Colorado, when they were absolutely blasting Colorado?
Yes.
And you probably went and made a sandwich or, you know, did something else or flipped somewhere, and you're like, oh, okay, well, we put a little dent in this one. And then you came back and said, what's the score?
Yeah.
That's what I think he dealt with a lot last year.
Charles, if you have your choice of all of these quarterbacks, and it's quarterback-rich draft, are you choosing Caleb? And do you believe Caleb, because of the infrastructure that is in place here in Chicago, do you believe he has the best possibility of being successful as early as possible?
Yeah, and let me just say something first before I give you my the right answer. You know, my answer, I should say. I shouldn't say the right answer. My answer. Chicago has built themselves to a point from these two eyes to where whatever quarterback got chosen in that spot would have a great chance of success. And the reason I say that is I feel like there's a little bit more of that stability. We use that word all the time. Ryan Poles, Eberflus kind of working together, scouting department working together, what they've drafted in time, how they played the second half of last year, where Eberflus ended up taking over the defense he didn't expect to. But, boy, I give him a ton of credit for being smart enough to realize, you know something, that's working pretty well. I'm going to keep calling it. Great play. Bet on yourself because that's what you're the master of. I thought the offense got better even though we're going to have different people in there. But the makings of an offensive line that can help a young quarterback is there. Is there more work that can be done? Yeah, we know that. But this is not abysmal that you're walking into. I mean, it's not what Bryce Young walked into. Okay? I mean, people can get on Bryce Young all they want, and there's plenty of things you can ding him for. Let any of the three of us go play behind that last year and see what kind of success we're going to have. And with the craziest irony, you know, he and C.J. Stroud went head-to-head last year. You know that, right? Mm-hmm. Houston went to Carolina, and Carolina won, and Bryce Young outplayed C.J. Stroud.
Right.
Weirdest thing I've ever seen when you take the whole season as a whole. Now, to answer your question, yes, I would take Caleb Williams number one. I think he's walking into a place that he has a chance for success. I realize, and I love how you open this, all the fighting about should we keep, Justin, what's going on? Well, everyone finally has realized he's out the door, he's not coming back. What are you doing? Turn the page. Let's go. Let's rally around this young kid and see what happens. I do think that he has a great chance for success here, and I do think that I would take him above all the other quarterbacks, even though there's some pretty good ones in this draft.
And based on what you said, and we're talking to Charles Davis, and we've had you on. Charles, I don't know if you're going to believe this. I don't know if we can believe it. We've been together now for over 17 years, Waddle and me. And we've had you on throughout those 17 years.
Yeah.
We've had you on through some of the arguing over Jay Cutler. We've had you on through Mitch Trubisky. We've had you on through Justin Fields. And every time we've hoped that guy was going to be the answer. Like when we have you on in 3 years from now, do you think we'll be thrilled that Caleb Williams is now the quarterback of the Bears?
Well, if we're really being honest about it, the history of the Bears says, no, we won't be happy in 3 years.
All right, Charles, that's enough from you. Good night. Have a great week.
Yeah, you just kicked another man down the stairs. What the hell?
Right? I mean, that's the reason that we've gotten along so well, right? You guys have a BS meter, and you're not going to let me get away with that. The truth of the matter is the history of the Chicago Bears at the quarterback position, no one's ever happy over an extended period of time. It's just the way it's been. How many times have you guys had to invoke Sid Luckman?
Oh.
Okay.
On that topic, Charles.
And yes, McMahon won a Super Bowl, but did that sustain? He came back and weighed 280 the next year in training camp, and that was all she wrote.
Right.
Okay. So that's all I'm saying is the history says that. What my eyes tell me is that this kid has a great chance of doing that. I like the structure that's in place now. I like the front office. I like the coaching staff in terms of what Eberflus did last year when he could have collapsed. You guys know it better than I do. Tell me I'm wrong. He could have collapsed under that pressure last year. He flat out could have. Yeah. Things went haywire. His defensive coordinator gets escorted out of the building is what I've heard. I don't know if I'm right on that one, but all of a sudden, boom, he's out. Now you got to adjust on the fly. Everyone's fighting about whether you're doing the right thing with Justin Fields or not. Is the offense going to get going? And that defense hung in there and played well down the stretch. I just liked what I saw. Now, is 1 year the same the next, what you did last year going to translate to the next year? You hope. But most of the people we run into say, there's not as much momentum in this league as you think. But I do like the direction that they're headed. Getting Jalen Johnson back was a big deal. I just like it, and I do think this kid's got a chance for success. So I'm going to go against history, and I'm going to say you're not going to be talking about Vince Evans and Bob Avellini here. Oof. How about that?
Thank goodness. And like we like to say, Charles, you can't hang the sins of a previous regime on this current group. So, here's a different time. Here's hopefully a different result. They have an opportunity as well to help themselves a little bit later in the first round at number 9.
Yes.
What do you believe would be the optimal result at 9?
If we had talked, let's say January, early February, wouldn't you have told me that your fans would have been screaming, "Give me Caleb Williams and one of those top receivers, and we're good"?
Yes, that's what they were screaming.
That's what I was.
You're not screaming that anymore, I don't believe, right? Because you picked up, Keenan Allen from the Chargers, so it's not the same need. Now, if they went and got one of those receivers, I wouldn't blame them because of their playmakers. But to me, if you could get one of the top edge rushers in this draft at 9, I think that would be a really happy move for them. Now, the kicker is, who do they like the best out of all of them? Because they're 3 different guys. Yes, 3 different people, but they're 3 different styles. Okay? The heaviest, most thumping guy you got is Verse. Dallas Turner is going to give you some of that, but it's not the same, and he's not quite as twitchy as Latu is. Latu's a lot more like Jalen Phillips coming out of UCLA, all right, who went to the Miami Dolphins. There's some similarities in how they carry themselves, how they move, even down to uniform number. All right, he's got the most tools in his bag about pass rushing and what he's going to do. But you're going to ask yourself, can he hold up 3 downs against the run? He's going to have to prove that part, plus with the medical that comes into play. Those are your 3 top edge rushers, all right? After that, If you want to bring Chop Robinson into the discussion, you can. But I do think it's those three, and then there's a line, and then we get to the next set of pass rushers off the edge. So you're not going to use Chop Robinson at 9, I don't believe. I think one of those three at 9, I don't have a major argument for that. To me, that's part of what is going to be the discussion with Ryan Poles, Matt Eberflus, and the rest of the crew. Do we do that? Or do we say, you know something? This is a really top-heavy offensive tackle group. Do we want to do something with Braxton Jones at left tackle? Not that I don't think he's been horrific, but do we want to think maybe we upgrade there since they spent the capital on Darnell Wright last year for Tennessee? To me, that's part of the big discussion that the Bears are going to have.
And Charles, is there any way that Joe Alt falls to them at 9?
It would take a few different tumbles in terms of this trade happened here, this trade happened there, this team moved here, this team moved there for specific targets. And there's only one quarterback target, I think, that we're talking about, because I do think that with all the smoke about Drake May no longer being, the flavor of the week, I don't believe it. I don't buy it. I say this every year, and I'm going to say it one more time with you guys. We start in January as we go to the bowl games, meaning the All-Star games, with the idea that these are the top players at certain positions, right? And then after about a month or so of talking about how great those kids are, we got to start picking at them a little bit because we're bored. We got to start drawing them. We got to bring them some challengers, okay? Well, maybe he's not as good, and he's got some flaws, and maybe you ought to play this guy. And this guy, well, no one's talked about him. We've overlooked him. And we go through plenty of time with that. And then about this time, what are we, a little bit less than 2 weeks before the draft? Yeah. You know what settles back in? Oh, yeah, you remember how we had him ranked in January? Pretty close to that again, folks.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And that's where, and I think that's where we're going with Drake May. I'm hearing all this conversation about I wouldn't touch him, and I saw this one quote from a coach who said, something, we'd all be fired by the time he's ready to play. And I've spent time with this young man. I think he's got the right stuff about him. I realize he's a redshirt sophomore, so it's only 2 years of play as opposed to the three or four that you would really like. But there's a lot in there. I mean, he comes from the family where he was tested each and every day. Now, nothing but D1 athletes. Yeah. This is how old I am. I was in school when his dad was the quarterback in North Carolina. Okay? So I remember Mark May playing. All right? I've seen his brothers play on the basketball court, You understand that sometimes these guys are forged a little bit more fire than they get credit for. I don't know who the coach was that said it, and I'm not going to fight him on his opinion. Like, if that's what he sees, I would take the opposite opinion, and I would roll with Drake May. I think he's going to be an excellent player. That's why I think that when it's all said and done, whoever's coming up to get a quarterback, I'd be surprised if you're not coming up from McCarthy, who's the fourth quarterback. Because I do think 1, 2, 3. If you're New England, if Bill Belichick's there, you're thinking about trading back, because that's what he does. He's not there. Okay? And Mr. Kraft has been very vociferous in the last 3, 4, 5 years about the draft, has he not? Mm-hmm. I don't think he wants to let one go. The only thing that can upset it is if they get in their head, and they can, J.J. McCarthy, Michigan, Tom Brady, Michigan. J.J. McCarthy, underrated, Tom Brady, underrated. J.J. McCarthy, he can handle New England. Let's do history again. That could very well happen. That wouldn't shock me, truthfully. It absolutely wouldn't shock me. Tom, you've been around that a long time. You were in the NFL. Am I way off on how people all of a sudden get there with certain things like that?
No, I not at all. And the funny thing about what you said, Charles, is like you go back to the Andrew Luck RG3 draft.
RG3.
Where you remember where
that one?
In January, everyone was like Andrew Luck. There's no question. And then as you drifted closer to the draft, maybe RG3. There was not a single front office guy in the National Football League in that draft that would have taken RG3 over Andrew Luck when it came to the draft day.
And here's the thing. It always comes back to so many of those things. I think you are spot on, because that's one of my favorite examples of the whole deal. Andrew Luck had been the purported number 1 pick for 2 years.
Right.
Okay? We tried to rise people up against Trevor Lawrence. Remember that? Where Trevor went through about 3 years. He was going to be the number 1 pick when he came out. And wasn't that Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson?
Yes.
Okay, so we had, 6 quarterbacks or 7 quarterbacks between in the first 2, 3 rounds of that draft. I think there's only 2 that are with the same team that they started with, and one of them is only there because they can't find another place to offload him, and that's Zach Wilson.
Yeah.
Lawrence is the last survivor, and he was number 1 at the top, Hasn't quite got to where we expect him to be. We thought last year would be the big jump, but again, he was battling injuries. This is the year it kind of has to happen that we expect. But going back to RG3 and Andrew Luck, we did everything possible to make RG3 the competitor. And by the way, had a heck of a rookie year.
He did, yeah.
But last thing I'm going to say, guys, is here's the one thing that all of us have got to start keeping in mind. When we talk about mobile quarterbacks, you will hear this 9 times out of 10 when one of us knuckleheads gets on air and starts yapping. And you ready for it?
Yeah.
Hey, give me that mobile quarterback behind a bad offensive line because maybe he can keep some things alive. He can create some plays and what have you. You know who takes more sacks than anyone in the league? Mobile quarterbacks. Yeah. You know why? They never give up on a play. They always think they can get out of it. Go back and look at Russell Wilson's sack numbers early in his career. Go check RG3 sack numbers early in his career. Go check any of these mobile quarterbacks, especially early before they realize, hey, I got to get rid of it and live to fight another down and quit giving up yardage. They take way more sacks than you would expect. The immobile guys that play out of the pocket and know that they can't run anywhere and get rid of it, they take a lot less sacks. How many sacks did Peyton ever take?
Not many.
How many sacks did Drew Brees? Drew Brees wasn't taking sacks because he knew what he was doing.
Tom Brady's the ultimate example.
Well, we lived it. We lived it the last 3 years.
Yeah, you're right. I think Justin Fields, in terms of sack percentage, probably led the league, and there was nobody more elusive than him.
And it's because they have so much confidence in who they are as athletes that they don't say, live to fight another down. Oh, I'm a sliver away from making this a big play. And you know what else happens? They make just enough of those plays that they don't abandon it, right? Most of the time you're like, no. And then they get away and they're like, okay, now remember next time, man, you got to get rid of the ball. And they don't because I got out of it last time. So enough of that soapbox preaching. It's just that I've learned that over the years. I love mobile quarterbacks, but I like mobile quarterbacks who understand when to be mobile and when to say, guess what? We're coming back for second down. Hey guy in the 5th row, here's a new Duke football for you.
That's right. Charles, really quick, just in 10 seconds, just to clarify. You said about the pass rushers. I just want to make sure that I heard you correctly. If Odunze is on the board at 9 and those pass rushers are on the board at 9, you're choosing one of the 3 pass rushers, correct?
I'm making a very, very concerted effort conversation with my crew. Which way are we going? Because I think a pass rusher there would really help Chicago. Look at the division now. Green Bay, Detroit. You got to do something with those offenses.